Tonight, the vote begins in Saskatchewan. Who will be the leaders of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations?
We finally have an Indigenous radio station where not even online, it's finally in the city.
And the beginning of a new era. First Peoples Radio launches in Toronto and Ottawa.
Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. For the next 2 days, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, more commonly known as FSIN, are holding their elections in Saskatoon. But what's happening at FSIN is a bit of a mystery. Chief Bobby Cameron, who is seeking a second term as FSIN chief, and his opponent Delbert Wapes haven't spoken to APTN about the election. And last month, police were called into the FSIN offices for reasons still unknown to APTN.
In an unrelated matter, Saskatoon police say they launched an investigation into an individual or individuals at the organization last November. And now media is reporting that the FSIN paid ransom money to a hacker. With the latest, here's APTN's Amber Bernard.
Today, I'm here outside the TCU building in Saskatoon, where the FSIN is holding its election assembly for both today and tomorrow. Today marks the first of many questions being asked about the future of FSIN, one which includes hacker allegations reported by other media this morning. Apparently, FSIN paid an anonymous hacker $20,000 in Bitcoin cryptocurrency because he held the online operations of FSIN ransom. With public criticism leading up to this week's allegations, one person says now is not the time to divide over these allegations, but to unite together for a stronger future.
Really don't fully are talking differently, are saying things against the FSIN. I think we need to review and bring forward a lot of these issues and the progress that we have made.
Tomorrow, the election results will be in, and we'll see how the FSIN decides to move forward. Amber Bernard, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The preliminary hearing for a man accused of throwing a trailer hitch at and killing an Indigenous woman wrapped up in Thunder Bay this morning. Braden Bushby was charged with second-degree murder in the death of Barbara Kentner. Our reporter Willow Fiddler was at the courthouse, and she joins us now. So, Willow, what's the latest on this preliminary hearing?
Braden Bushby walked out of the Thunder Bay courthouse this afternoon with his family. He's scheduled to return on January 15 to find out if he goes to trial for the second-degree murder of Barbara Kentner. The court heard closing submissions today as the preliminary hearing wrapped up. Bushby was charged with second-degree murder last year after Barbara Kentner died from injuries after she was hit with a trailer hitch while she walked down a street in January of 2016. But in today's closing submissions, the Crown prosecutor asked the judge to also put Bushby on trial for aggravated assault. It was what he was initially charged with before Barbara Kentner died.
And so what was the response to that?
Bushby's defense argued the judge should either drop the second-degree murder charge or commit Bushby on a charge of manslaughter or aggravated assault or assault with a weapon. In his statements to the court, the Crown said there is sufficient evidence to move the trial forward on a second-degree murder charge. There is a publication ban, so we can't say what that evidence is, but what the court does need to consider before coming back in January is evidence that Bushby did in fact throw the trailer hitch that struck Barbara Kentner in the stomach, evidence that injuries from that impact caused Barbara's death, and evidence that Bushby intended to harm Barbara Kentner when he allegedly threw the trailer hitch out the window of that moving vehicle. We also know the key witnesses in this case include the three other passengers, or the three other people, who were in the vehicle with Bushby at that time. Barbara's sister Melissa, who saw the vehicle approaching them, and the forensic pathologist who performed the post-mortem on Barbara after she died.
Okay, well, thanks so much for this, Willow. We will be following back to check up with you.
Thanks, Melissa.
The airwaves in Toronto and Ottawa sounded a bit more Indigenous today. A gap in radio is being filled with a new beat. Here's Annette Francis in Ottawa.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And with that, Element FM is now live in Ottawa and Toronto. First People's Radio is a brainchild of APTN. CEO Jean Rose says it's been a long time coming.
This has been 3.5 years in the making. We've been working very, very hard to make it happen. We first started planning this back in 2015, I believe, 2014, 15. And the goal being that there needed to be a substantial presence in major urban centers.
David Pango has joined the celebration in Toronto. He says he'll be tuning in every day.
We finally have an Indigenous radio station where not even online, it's finally in the city where you can, we can drive around downtown and enjoy your music and your Indigenous style.
Exciting time, says Inuk elder Peter Ernick. With a growing First Nation, Métis and Inuit population in urban areas, he says it's something for everyone.
This is an opportunity to learn about Indigenous Inuit culture for you. It's an opportunity to learn about much bigger about Inuit Indigenous history, that we've been here for thousands and thousands of years. We know our country. It's an opportunity for you to learn a lot more about it through the new radio station.
Singer-songwriter Missy Knott from Curve Lake, Ontario, is one of the first voices to be heard in Ottawa. She's the afternoon host.
This is setting an amazing foundation for all the generations that are coming next who are creating art, creating music. APTN established this for us a while back, but to have a platform that's radio, that people, they're trapped in their cars, they want new information, they want new music. I just think this is a great way to reach a new community and have people learn about, Indigenous values and culture and hear what we're doing, because what we're doing is always awesome.
APTN board member and general manager of NCI Radio in Manitoba, David McLeod, made the trip to Ottawa for the launch. He says any day Indigenous voices get to reach a mass audience is special.
When a person turns on the radio, they want to know what they're going to get. You develop a relationship, and people count on that relationship on a daily basis. So keeping your tone, your energy, just being consistent is really important. And I think being part of the community. Listeners in Toronto can listen in at 106.5 FM,
and in Ottawa, tune in to 95.7. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Montreal police have been getting Indigenous sensitivity training for the nearly 3 years, but how they received the training and whether they put it to use is the subject of some controversy. Tom Fenario has this story.
Adrienne Campbell was speaking to police officers from all over Montreal about the reality faced by the city's Indigenous homeless. The Cree woman is here because she's the director of Montreal's homeless Indigenous overnight shelter, known by its French acronym, PAC.
So my goal today is not to have a confrontational approach, it's not to criticize. It is what is the best way to engage people with the information that we need them to know in order to better serve Aboriginal people in homelessness.
Campbell is one of 3 Indigenous speakers taking part in this 4-hour sensitivity training session for police. Aside from discussing modern struggles, it also gives officers some historical context as to why many Indigenous people suffer from intergenerational trauma.
To understand the difficulties that they're living, so that when they do the interventions, they take that extra 5 minutes to make sure that the person gets all the help possible.
Issues behind how well the Montreal police are being trained were raised this past summer after an Inuk woman went missing in the city for 5 days after being released from this detention center. Mina Akuliak was left to fend for herself late at night in an industrial part of Montreal, even though she speaks neither English nor French. She was injured and suffers from mental health problems.
The police force takes it very seriously. There's an investigation, and if there is improvements to be made, adjustments, they will be done.
The police also took a PR hit last February when it was made public that culturally appropriate training sessions designed for them were being abandoned. This is how Naguset of the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal described police attitudes towards the sessions.
I don't really want to know about your history. I just want to know, what do I do when I see a drunk Indian?
The reason why there was a change in the training, we had our research department do a sondage, a survey, and It didn't respond to the operational needs of the Montreal Police Force.
But other Canadian police forces, such as Winnipeg, have embraced cultural-based training techniques like the blanket exercise. In 2016, Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe described it as eye-opening and thought-provoking. De Angelis declined to speculate as to why Montreal police disliked the approach. For her part, Campbell says that in the 3 years she's been giving these sessions, she's seen improvement.
Through these sessions, there's been more and more working together. So we've seen an increase in police bringing people to PAC rather than incarcerating. So that's been quite a positive change.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
We need to take a quick break, but we still have more news to come.
But before that, here's a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 5 with snow in Halifax, plus 12 for St. John's, plus 5 in snow in Cartwright, 0 with a rain-snow mix for Nain. Sunny skies in Montreal with a high of 7, plus 2 with snow in Val-d'Or, 10 above in Toronto and Sarnia, 1 degree warmer in Windsor with the sun out. Rain and 7 above for Thunder Bay, 6 with showers for Wawa, 0 in snow in Puckatawagan, -1 in snow in Thompson, plus 3 for Norway House. 10 above in Winnipeg with some showers, rain, and 11 for Brandon. In Saskatchewan, a beautiful day, 15 above for Swift Current, 14 and sunny skies in Regina, plus 7 in Buffalo Narrows, plus 8 in Meadow Lake.
The Mohawk Council of Ganawage wants to move forward on their own cannabis law proposed last September to the community's members. The next step is to gauge the community's opinion on the sale of cannabis on the territory. Danielle Rochette reports.
While hundreds of Quebecers have legally bought pot since October 17th, there is a moratorium on any production or sale of cannabis in the Mohawk community of Ganawage. The Mohawk Council does not want to make the same mistakes that has been done concerning tobacco, with few rules and contraband issues. Gina Deere explains.
We have some history with the tobacco industry, and we know that there was a great deal of people looking to monopolize on this new legislation and legalization. So there was concern about having an representation of shops in the territory.
The council has been working since 2016 on a proposed cannabis law that they want specific to their needs and their values, but one question remains.
We see that people are tolerant to have a manufacturing in Ganawage around cannabis. There's less tolerance for distribution. There's a lot of concern about distribution, and that's why we decided to do the polling.
The members of the community are invited all week long to the Golden Age Club to answer questions about allowing the sale of legal cannabis on the territory. John McCumber, a community member, says there's a great opportunity in cannabis legalization.
I'm in favor of produce and to sell, because the town, the council, the people in Ganawage should benefit from this billion-dollar industry. And I think that we can regulate ourselves, we can stay out of the outside system, develop our own system.
The Longhouse in Ganawage has released a statement last week saying that they are not considering cannabis as a traditional medicine.
We're not against the medical use of cannabis. It's just the recreational use. We consider that a mind changer, something that affects how you think and how you behave. It's not in our traditions. We're against alcohol, and we're against cannabis. So we don't think that the Creator made these things for us to, in our normal everyday life.
The issue remains very controversial. Number of residents plans to deliver this week to the Ganawage Mohawk Council a cease and desist letter on enacting the Ganawage Cannabis Control Law, as they want a more community-inclusive process. Daniel Rochette, APTN National News, Ganawage.
To Yellowknife now, where the Auditor General tabled a new report that shows things in the Northwest Territories are getting a lot worse for kids in foster care and at-risk children. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs joins us to talk a bit more about the report. Charlotte, thanks for taking some time for us. Can you give us some background on the audits regarding foster care in the Northwest Territories?
Absolutely, Dennis. So the rate of children in care in the NWT has remained consistent over the past decade, with 98% of those cases of those children being Indigenous. Now, the Governor General usually reserves full audits for the most extreme circumstances, and they did a full audit back in 2014, which showed that the government of the Northwest Territories was not doing an adequate job at keeping kids safe. And they came back up now in 2018 to do another report. Now, in between that time, CBC had requested access of information, some information on the 2015-2016 years, and there was a lot of secrecy, redacted documents. So this is kind of the first time since 2014 that we've been able to get a look at just how bad things are in the territories for the foster care system.
And so what are you seeing in this report?
So there was quite the 41-page document had a lot of damning information. In every department, pretty much the government of the Northwest Territories failed, and that would be the Health and Social Service Department and the Health and Social Service Authority. And it showed that they looked at 27 cases, and within the 27 cases, there were things such as 90% of the kids were not having regular communication once a month communication with our caseworker. That was up from 60% back in 2014, so things are getting worse. It showed things like the government not properly screening foster care families. You know, that includes doing an adequate criminal records background check, doing one-on-one interviews. It showed that a lot of kids were bouncing around from place to place. One child had been, back in 2017, had been around to 20 different foster homes. It showed one case also where a child had ran away from home, and for an entire week, and the government didn't know whose responsibility that was. A lot of information such as that.
And so what is the government's response to the report?
So the government today, they were swift to speak with media. They held a press conference, and essentially they spoke towards a lot of the policies they put in place in the last 2 years since the first full audit was completed back in 2014. But they did admit that a lot of their sort of supports and the urgency was placed on changing the administrative system. That includes putting in new framework, new action plans, a lot of window dressing. Through media questions, we were able to grill them. However, on frontline workers, you know, we have 25% vacancy rate at any given time for social workers in the NWT, and the government didn't really have an answer as to how they're going to address things like that for the frontline workers.
Well, something you'll definitely be paying attention to. Appreciate you taking some time for us today, Charlotte.
Thank you, Dennis.
Well, it's unexpectedly messy and controversial these days. Who is Métis and who is not? So we put Métis identity in focus this afternoon. Here's a bit of what was said.
I've accessed over 5,000 individual genealogies that are used by organizations. So they basically presented them in court cases. And looking through those 5,000 genealogies, and these are genealogies of Eastern Métis organizations and individuals who are claiming that identity, 80% of those over 5,000, the individuals are relying on a woman in the 1600s as the basis for their Indigenous identity. And in many cases, and what I found actually is that 30% of those of the overall claims, the individual has no Indigenous ancestry. Because what happens is there's a bunch of French women, particularly in Nova Scotia and Acadia, who are turned into Indigenous women for the purpose of this movement. And this is stuff that they present in court as evidence of their existence.
Yeah, we just come out of the closet because in the 1500s, when the first mixed marriage happened here, and we have all kinds of records in the 1600s and 1700s with the mixed marriages, the Jesuit priests named the children métissage, and that's how they're referred to. And in all of the historian records, they're referred to either as Acadian Métis, or Métis.
You can watch the full episode of That in Focus on the APTN News Facebook page.
And it'll be on the website later. It's a good episode. You should watch it. Many are mourning the death of a woman who dedicated her life to the well-being of Indigenous women in Quebec.
We'll have her story and more after the break, but first, here's the rest of tomorrow's weather.
I'm Kent Driscoll in scenic Cape Dorset, Nunavut. This week, we'll be bringing you some stories from this South Baffin community of around 1,400 people. This is the 2018 Cape Dorset Prints Collection, and it was premiered right here at the Kanujuak-Ashivak Cultural Center. We'll meet the woman who runs this gallery, take a closer look at some of the prints, and examine the history that makes Cape Dorset one of Nunavut's best-known cultural centers. Cape Dorset, Nunavut, this week on APTN National News.
Picking back up in northern Alberta, 14 above with sunny skies in Grand Prairie, sun's out in Peace River, the high of 13, 17 for Lethbridge, 15 under sunny skies in Medicine Hat and Edmonton. Rain on the wet coast, 15 in Tofino, 13 for Victoria and Campbell River. 7 above under sunny skies in Dease Lake, 10 with sun in Smithers. In the Yukon, sunny and 7 in Dawson, +4 under sunny skies for Beaver Creek. Over to NWT, +5 in Fort Liard and Trout Lake, +3 for Fort Simpson. Sunny and -5 for Sax Harbor, -2 for Tuck and Fort McPherson. In Nunavut, -14 in Whale Cove and Chesterfield, 17 below for Repulse Bay. Snow and -6 in Cambridge Bay, -17 in Arctic Bay, -18 in Resolute.
Welcome back. The Federal Minister of Fisheries and Oceans was in Iqaluit today to announce a new DFO region, the Arctic region. The new region covers 4 areas where Inuit live: the Northwest Territory, Nunavut, Northern Quebec, and Labrador. The Arctic region also accounts for 50% of Canada's coastline. Inuit Tapirut Kanatami President Natan Obed said that was there for the announcement. He says the DFO worked with the ITK to hire an Inuk to run the new region, and he would like to see more of that.
It makes total sense for Inuit to be involved in hiring processes, in strategic conversations about how the federal government implements its obligations to Inuit in Inuit Nunangat.
France Robertson was dedicated to the well-being of First Nation women in Quebec. Her sudden passing last week left the Indigenous community in shock. The Innu mother of 2 was on the board of the Quebec Friendship Centres. Since 2012, she worked as the general manager of the Friendship Centre in Joliet. She also spent 10 years working for the Quebec Native Women's Organization. France Robertson was laid to rest today in Mastoyatch, Quebec. She was 47. Always sad news to leave on. That is all the time we have for the news today. You can always find more on our website. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night.